I found her in the rubble 3 hours after the bombardment stopped. She was pinned under a collapsed support beam, her cobalt blue uniform torn and stained with that luminescent blood her kind bled. Her eyes, those large golden eyes, tracked me as I limped closer, my rifle dangling useless from its sling. She didn't beg, didn't scream, just watched me with something between resignation and defiance. I should have kept walking, should have let the ruins finish what my platoon started. But I stopped. I knelt. And when I spoke, the words came out broken and raw. I killed your brothers in arms. She already knew. I could see it in the way her jaw tightened, in the flicker of grief that crossed her face before she pushed it down. I pulled the beam off her anyway. The war started when I was 19. That was 7 years ago, back when I thought duty meant something clean, something noble. The Caltheris Empire had been expanding for centuries, absorbing lesser species into their concordance of progress. And humanity's stubborn refusal to bow was apparently an inconvenience they couldn't tolerate. They sent diplomats first, cold, efficient beings who spoke in mathematical probabilities and economic inevitabilities. They offered us a place in their empire, protection under their fleets, access to technologies that could cure diseases and extend lifespans. All we had to do was surrender our autonomy, our governments, our right to self-determination. We told them to go to hell. The first wave hit Earth's outer colonies 6 months later. They didn't bother with warnings, didn't try to minimize casualties. The Caltheris didn't wage war like humans did, messy, emotional, chaotic. They waged it like accountants, calculating acceptable losses and optimal strike vectors. 12 colonies were glassed in the opening salvo. 4 million dead before humanity even mobilized. I enlisted the day after New Gdansk burned. My mother tried to stop me, grabbing my arm as I headed for the recruiter's office in our hab block. She was crying, mascara running down her weathered face. "They'll kill you, Marcus," she said. "You're just one person. What difference can you make?" I didn't have an answer then. I was just angry, just broken. My girlfriend, Sophia, had been on New Gdansk, working a hydroponics internship. We'd planned to get married when she came back. I still had the ring in my pocket when I signed the enlistment forms. Boot camp was brutal. The instructors didn't coddle us, didn't pretend we were going to come home heroes. "The Caltheris are better than us in every measurable way," Sergeant Voss told us on day 1, pacing in front of our formation with his hands clasped behind his back. "Are faster, stronger. Their reflexes are 3 times ours. Their ships are more advanced. Their tactics are perfected over millennia of conquest. You want to know how we beat them?" Nobody answered. We were too terrified. "We don't fight fair," Voss said, and smiled. "We cheat. We improvise. We do things they can't predict because they're too goddamn logical to understand why anyone would do something so stupid." He was right. The Caltheris thought in patterns, in optimal solutions, but humans. We thought in desperation, in rage, in love and hate and all the messy, irrational emotions that made us weak and unpredictable in equal measure. My first combat drop was on Verlaine Station, a mining outpost the Caltheris had captured 3 weeks earlier. The objective was simple: retake the fusion reactors and deny the enemy a forward operating base. Intelligence said there were maybe 200 Caltheris troops on site. Intelligence was wrong. There were 800. We came in hot, drop pods screaming through the thin atmosphere and hit the ground running. I remember the sound of my own breathing inside the helmet, harsh and rapid, the weight of the rifle in my hands, the way the Caltheris moved, fluid, precise, like dancers executing a choreographed routine. They killed 18 of my platoon in the first 5 minutes. I watched a Caltheris soldier shoot through a bulkhead to kill Private Chen. Watched another one dodge a grenade I threw, moving so fast it looked like he teleported. They didn't miss, didn't hesitate. Every shot was center mass, Every movement was calculated. But they didn't expect us to rig the reactors to blow. Corporal Hayes made the call. We were pinned down in the reactor control room, ammunition running low, half the squad dead or dying. The Caltheris were advancing methodically, clearing room by room. We had maybe 5 minutes before they overran us. Hayes looked at me, his face pale under the grime and blood. "Marcus, you're fast. Think you can make it to the evac point? What about you? Someone needs to stay and finish the override sequence. Reactors go critical in 10 minutes. That's enough time for you to run." I should have argued, should have fought him for the right to stay. But I was 19 and scared, and I wanted to live, so I ran. I ran through corridors slick with blood and coolant, past bodies of friends and enemies alike, while behind me Hayes bought me every second with his life. The reactors blew when I was 300 meters from the evac shuttle. The shockwave knocked me flat, and I felt the heat even through my armor. When I looked back, Verlaine Station was a miniature sun, expanding and collapsing in on itself. 200 Caltheris died in that explosion. So did Hayes and the 6 soldiers who stayed with him. We called it a victory, pinned medals on the survivors. But I knew better. Victory was supposed to feel like something. Instead, I just felt hollow. That's how the war went. Humanity losing ground, losing ships, losing worlds, but we made them pay for every inch. We booby-trapped everything, turned civilian infrastructure into weapons, used tactics the Caltheris considered dishonorable. Guerrilla strikes, false surrenders, biological warfare. We became monsters because the alternative was extinction. And somewhere along the way, I stopped being Marcus Torres, the kid who wanted to avenge his girlfriend. I became something else, something colder. By year 5, I was a sergeant myself. By year 6, I'd lost count of how many Caltheris I'd killed, stopped seeing them as people. They were just targets, just obstacles between me and survival. Then came Jericho's fall. Jericho 7 was a fortress world, one of humanity's last strongholds in the outer territories. Command said if we lost Jericho, we lost the sector, so they sent everything. 3 battle groups, 20,000 soldiers, every asset we could spare. The Caltheris sent twice that. The siege lasted 4 months. 4 months of orbital bombardment, of rationed food and recycled water, of watching the defensive perimeter shrink day by day. We held the central citadel, a massive structure built into the planet's bedrock, but the Caltheris controlled everything else. I was leading a squad of 12 by then. Good soldiers, most of them. Veterans who'd seen enough to know when to duck and when to charge. We were tasked with holding Sector 7 Delta, a series of underground tunnels that connected the citadel to the surface supply depots. The Caltheris came at us in waves. Not mindless charges, they weren't stupid, but calculated pushes, probing for weaknesses. We'd hold for hours, then fall back to the next defensive line, hold again, fall back again. It was during one of those retreats that I met Commander Rayner. She was human, a naval officer who'd survived her ship getting shot down during the orbital battle. She'd been on the ground for a week, organizing supply runs and coordinating with resistance cells outside the citadel. She was maybe 30, with short-cropped dark hair and eyes that had seen too much. "Sergeant Torres," she said when I reported to her makeshift command post, "I need your squad for a suicide mission." I laughed. Couldn't help it. "Which one? We've been running those since Tuesday." She didn't smile. "There's a Caltheris command center 5 clicks north. If we take it out, their coordination in this sector collapses. They'll lose their tactical network advantage. And it's behind their lines, dug into a civilian district they've fortified. You'd be going in with no support, no extraction, and no guarantee you'd make it back." I looked at my squad. They were exhausted, armor battered, eyes hollow. But when I asked, "Who's in?" every single one of them raised their hand. We went in that night. 12 of us, moving through the ruins of what used to be a residential neighborhood. The Caltheris had set up checkpoints every 2 blocks, patrols sweeping constantly. But we were humans. We knew how to hide, how to wait. It took us 4 hours to reach the command center, another hour to plant the charges. We were almost out, almost clear, when one of my soldiers, Private Kim, barely 20 years old, tripped a sensor. The Caltheris response was immediate. Alarms screamed, floodlights snapped on, and suddenly we were fighting for our lives in the middle of a street surrounded by enemies. We made it 2 blocks before they cornered us. I won't describe what happened next in detail, not because I don't remember, I remember every second, but because some things shouldn't be said out loud. Just know that when the charges blew and the command center collapsed, only 3 of us were left alive. Me, Private Ortiz, and Corporal Samuels. We limped back to friendly lines at dawn, our armor held together with tape and prayers. Commander Reina met us at the entrance. She didn't congratulate us, didn't celebrate the successful mission. She just looked at the empty space where 9 soldiers should have been standing and said, "I'm sorry." The Caltheris counterattacked 2 days later. They broke through Sector 7 Delta in less than an hour. Overran the citadel by nightfall. Those of us who survived scattered into the ruins, fighting a losing guerrilla war against an enemy that owned the sky and the ground. That's where I was when I found her. 3 weeks after Jericho's fall became official. I was alone. Ortiz and Samuels had died in an ambush a week prior, moving through the bombed-out remains of the citadel's eastern wing. I was out of rations, low on ammo, and nursing a shrapnel wound in my side that I was pretty sure had gotten infected. I was ready to die, almost wanted to. The war was over. Humanity had lost Jericho, and without it, the sector would fall. It was just a matter of time. Then I heard the sound of something shifting in the rubble nearby. I approached carefully, rifle up, expecting a trap or maybe a wounded animal. Instead, I found her. A Caltheris officer. Female, I thought, though their sexual dimorphism was subtle. She was partially buried under a collapsed support beam, her right leg bent at an unnatural angle. Her uniform was the cobalt blue of their command staff, decorated with rank insignias I didn't recognize. She looked up at me, and for a moment, neither of us moved. I could have killed her, should have killed her. She was the enemy. Her kind had burned my worlds, killed my friends, destroyed everything I'd ever cared about. But something stopped me. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe it was the hollowness inside me that had grown so large I couldn't feel anything anymore, or maybe it was the look in her eyes, not fear, but something else. Acceptance, like she'd already made peace with dying. I lowered the rifle. "I killed your brothers in arms," I said. The words came out in her language. I'd learned enough Caltheris during the war to interrogate prisoners. "In the command center, 3 weeks ago, I'm the one who blew it up." She stared at me for a long moment. Then, in flawless, if accented English, she replied, "Then why are you talking to me instead of finishing it?" Good question. I knelt beside the beam, pinning her down. It was a solid piece of reinforced alloy, maybe 200 kilos. Normally, I wouldn't have been able to move it, but adrenaline and desperation do funny things to the human body. I braced my good shoulder under the beam and lifted. The pain in my side exploded, white-hot and blinding. I felt something tear, felt warm blood soaking into my undersuit. But I kept lifting, kept pushing, until the beam shifted enough for her to drag herself free. She gasped, clutching her leg. The break was bad. Compound fracture, bone visible through blue-gray skin. She wouldn't be walking on it anytime soon. I collapsed next to her, breathing hard, vision swimming. The world tilted sideways. I was going to pass out, I realized, going to bleed out right here in the rubble next to an enemy soldier I'd just saved. The last thing I felt before the darkness took me was her hand on my shoulder, surprisingly gentle. When I woke up, I was still alive. That was surprising. The pain in my side had dulled to a constant throb, and when I tried to move, I found bandages wrapped around my torso. Not military issue. Improvised, torn from fabric I didn't recognize. I opened my eyes. The Caltheris officer was sitting a few feet away, her back against a chunk of concrete, her injured leg splintered with pieces of metal rebar and more fabric. She was watching me with those golden eyes, unblinking. "You cauterized the wound," she said. "With a plasma cutter from my toolkit, you were hemorrhaging." I tried to sit up and immediately regretted it. The world spun and I tasted bile. "You saved me." "You saved me first. It seemed equitable." Her voice was strange, melodic but flat, like she was reading from a script. The Caltheris didn't do emotion the way humans did. They felt things, I'd learned, but expressed them differently. More subtle, more controlled. I managed to prop myself against the wall. My rifle was lying next to me, within reach but not pointed at her. Her sidearm was missing from its holster. Smart. "What's your name?" I asked. She hesitated. Giving names to the enemy was apparently something the Caltheris didn't do either. But after a moment she said, "Salis Kren, Commander, 3rd Fleet, Intelligence Division, Marcus Torres, Sergeant, Terran Defense Force." I paused. Guess that doesn't mean much anymore. "Your forces have withdrawn from this planet. The siege is over. Jericho 7 belongs to the Concordance now." "I know." "Then why didn't you evacuate?" "Missed the last shuttle. Was busy blowing up your command center." Something flickered across her face. Not anger, I thought. Something else. "You destroyed more than the command center. The building collapse killed 73 officers. Most of them were analysts, communications specialists, not soldiers." The guilt hit me like a physical blow. I'd known there would be collateral damage, had accepted it as the cost of war. But hearing it stated so plainly, so precisely, made it real in a way it hadn't been before. "I'm sorry," I said, and meant it. Salis Kren tilted her head, studying me. "You're apologizing. That's unusual. Human soldiers usually justify such actions as necessary." "It was necessary. Doesn't mean I'm proud of it." She was quiet for a long time. Then, "I had a mate among the dead, Kel Oren. He was a cultural liaison officer. His job was to help integrate conquered species into the Concordance peacefully. He believed violence was inefficient." I closed my eyes. Of course I'd killed someone she loved. The universe had a sick sense of humor. "I'm sorry," I said again, because there was nothing else to say. "Well, why did you help me?" Her voice was sharper now, demanding, "You had every reason to let me die. Every reason to kill me yourself. Your species excels at revenge." "I don't know. That's insufficient. It's the truth." I opened my eyes and looked at her. Really looked. She was young for an officer, I thought. Her face was angular, elegant in an alien way, with fine scales that caught the dim light filtering through the ruins. There was a scar on her jaw, old and silvered. Maybe I'm just tired of killing. Maybe I wanted to do one decent thing before I died. Or maybe I'm just stupid. Take your pick. She studied me for a moment longer, then nodded slowly. "Stupidity seems most probable." I laughed, couldn't help it. The absurdity of the situation, 2 enemies, both wounded, both stranded in the ruins of a dead world, having a philosophical conversation, was too much. The laugh turned into a cough, and the cough made my side scream, but it felt good anyway. Salis Kren didn't laugh, but her posture relaxed slightly. "We need to move. This structure is unstable. There are safer locations deeper in the Citadel. You can't walk. Neither can you, but we can help each other, otherwise we both die here." She was right. The ruins were dangerous, unstable floors, pockets of toxic gas from ruptured chemical storage, and the ever-present risk of secondary collapse. We needed shelter, water, medical supplies if we could find them. "Why help me?" I asked. "Why not just wait for your people to find you?" My comm unit was destroyed in the collapse. The rescue teams are searching sectors 7 through 12. This is Sector 14. By the time they expand the search grid to this area, I will have died from dehydration or infection. She paused. "And you are not what I expected." "What did you expect?" "A monster. That's what they tell us humans are. Unpredictable, violent, incapable of reason." Her golden eyes met mine. "You are violent, but you are not a monster." It took us 3 hours to move 200 meters. I fashioned a crutch for her from a piece of pipe, and she leaned on me for support while I leaned on the wall. Every step was agony. My wound kept seeping, staining the bandages dark. Her leg was worse. I could see the pain in the way her jaw clenched, the way her breathing quickened. But she didn't complain, didn't ask to rest. Caltheris didn't show weakness. It was bred out of them, I'd heard. A species-wide cultural trait developed over millennia of imperial expansion. Show weakness, and you were replaced. Show weakness, and you endangered the unit. But I saw it anyway, in the way her hand trembled slightly when she gripped my shoulder, in the pale cast of her skin. She was suffering just as much as I was. We found shelter in what used to be an officer's quarters, half buried but intact enough to provide cover. There was even a water reclamator still functioning, trickling clean water into a small basin. We drank greedily, both of us too thirsty to care about rationing. After, I collapsed onto what remained of a bunk. Salis Kren settled on the floor, her back against the wall, her injured legs stretched out in front of her. "Tell me about him," I said after a while. "Your mate?" She didn't answer immediately. When she did, her voice was softer than before. "Why?" "Because I killed him. I should at least know who he was." Another long pause. Then, "He was brilliant, infuriating. He believed the Concordance could be better than it was, more than just conquerors. He wanted to build something lasting, something meaningful." She looked down at her hands. "He used to say that every species had something unique to offer. That diversity strengthened the whole. Most Caltheris thought he was naive." "What did you think?" "I thought he was right. But I also thought the Empire would never let him prove it." There was something in her voice. Grief, yes, but also anger. Not at me, I realized. At her own people. "Your turn," she said. "Tell me about someone you lost." So I told her about Sophia, about the plans we'd made, the life we'd imagined, about how I'd kept the engagement ring in my pocket through 7 years of war because throwing it away felt like admitting she was really gone, about how stupid and sentimental that was. Salis Kren listened without interrupting. When I finished, she said, "That's not stupid. That's grief. Grief is logical. It serves a function. It reminds us what we're fighting for." I don't even know what I'm fighting for anymore. Survival. That's not enough. It's more than most have. We fell into silence after that. But it was a different kind of silence, less hostile, less wary. Over the next 2 days, we fell into a routine. I'd scavenge for supplies, nutrient packs, medical gel, anything useful, while Salis Kren worked on rigging a signal booster from salvaged parts. Her leg was healing slowly. The fracture stabilized, but still weeks away from bearing weight. My wound wasn't healing at all. The infection had spread despite the field antibiotics I'd found, and I was running a low-grade fever. We talked, not constantly, but in fragments. She told me about Caltheris culture, the rigid hierarchy, the emphasis on efficiency, the way emotions were considered a liability unless channeled productively. I told her about Earth, about the colonies, about how humans had barely made it to the stars before her people tried to snuff us out. "We didn't try to exterminate you," she said one evening as we shared a nutrient pack that tasted like cardboard. The Concordance's goal was integration. We offered you peace. You offered us chains. Is autonomy worth dying for? Yes. She considered that. I don't understand. The Concordance provides security, stability, technology, resources. What does autonomy offer that's more valuable? The right to fail on our own terms, the right to make mistakes, the right to be stupid and reckless and human. I looked at her. Your people don't get that, do they? You've been part of the machine for so long, you've forgotten what it's like to be individuals. We are individuals. Are you? When's the last time you made a decision that wasn't calculated for optimal outcome? When's the last time you did something because it felt right, not because it made sense? She opened her mouth to answer, then closed it, frowned. You saved me. That didn't make sense. Exactly. But that's... She struggled with the words. That's irrational, inefficient. It endangered you for no strategic gain. Welcome to humanity. Something changed in her expression. Not understanding. Not yet. But the beginning of it. A crack in the certainty. On the third day, she got the signal booster working. It was a weak signal, barely enough to reach Caltheris units a few clicks away. But it was enough. She could call for rescue. Could go home. She stared at the device in her hands for a long time. That they'll capture you, she said finally. If they find us together, they'll assume you're a prisoner or a threat. They'll interrogate you, possibly execute you. I know. I could hide you, tell them I was alone. You could escape before they arrive. Why would you do that? Because, she trailed off, searching for words, because you are not a monster, and I'm tired of pretending everyone who opposes the Concordance is. Saliskren, go, please, while you still can. I should have taken the offer, should have disappeared into the ruins and tried to find another way off-world. But I looked at her, this enemy soldier who'd saved my life, who'd shared her grief with me, who was offering me a chance at survival at great risk to herself, and I couldn't do it. No, I said. Why not? Because you saved me. Because we're in this together now. And because... I paused, trying to articulate something I barely understood myself. Because maybe there's a reason we both survived. Maybe there's something we're supposed to do. That's absurd. Probably. But I'm human. We specialize in absurd. She stared at me for a moment, then did something I'd never seen a Caltheris do. She smiled. It was small, barely there, but it was real. Very well. Then we find another way. The other way presented itself the next morning when a patrol found us. Not Caltheris, human. 3 soldiers from the resistance cells still operating in the ruins, led by a grizzled corporal named Hayes. Not my Hayes, he'd died on Verlaine, but someone who carried themselves with the same weary competence. They had their rifles trained on Saliskren the moment they entered the shelter. I step away from the prisoner, Sergeant, Hayes said, his voice flat and dangerous. She's not a prisoner. The hell she isn't. That's a Caltheris officer, Intel Division, judging by the insignia. Do you have any idea what she's worth? She saved my life. Don't care. We've got orders to capture any enemy command staff we find. She's coming with us. Saliskren didn't move, didn't react, but I saw her hand edge toward a piece of rubble nearby. Saw the calculation in her eyes. She was going to fight. She was going to die. I stepped between her and the rifles. No, I said. Hayes's expression hardened. Sergeant Torres, move aside. That's an order. You're not my commanding officer anymore. The chain of command broke when Jericho fell. And I'm telling you, she's under my protection. Your protection? Hayes laughed, but it wasn't a kind sound. You've gone soft, Torres. Or stupid. Maybe both. Maybe. But I'm not moving. We stared at each other for a long moment. The other two soldiers looked uncertain, their rifles wavering slightly. They didn't want to shoot me, but they would if Hayes gave the order. Then Saliscren spoke. I have information about Concordance fleet movements, supply routes, strategic weaknesses. Her voice was calm, measured. I will share it freely, but only if Sergeant Torres remains unharmed. Hayes's eyes narrowed. Why would you betray your people? Because I am beginning to suspect they are wrong, and because this human showed me mercy when he had no reason to. I would like to understand why. It was a lie, at least partially. She didn't have detailed intelligence. Her command center had been destroyed weeks ago, but it was a good lie. Convincing, and it gave Hayes a reason to stand down. He lowered his rifle. Fine, you both come with us. But if she tries anything, Torres, she's your responsibility. Understood. As we followed them out of the shelter, Saliscren leaned close and whispered, Why did you do that? Because, I said, you were right. We're in this together now. She didn't respond, but I felt her grip on my shoulder tighten, just for a moment. A silent acknowledgement, a fragile trust. It was the first time in 7 years that I felt like maybe, just maybe, the war wasn't the only thing that mattered. The resistance base was deeper in the citadel than I'd realized, carved into bedrock and shielded by layers of collapsed infrastructure. Maybe 60 people total, soldiers, civilians, a few techs keeping the life support running. They looked at Saliscren the way you'd look at a live grenade, wary, hostile, waiting for her to explode. Commander Reyna was there. She'd survived after all. She took one look at me and Saliscren and shook her head. Torres, of course it's you. Only you would drag an enemy officer into our hideout and expect us to just accept it. She has intel, ma'am. So Hayes told me. Reyna folded her arms. The question is whether that intel is worth the risk. We've got families down here. Torres. Kids. If she's compromised, if she's broadcasting our position. She's not. You can't know that. I do. Reyna looked between us, and I saw the moment she understood, saw the judgment flicker across her face before she buried it under professionalism. Jesus, Marcus, you didn't. I didn't what? Fall for the enemy. I wanted to deny it, wanted to say she was wrong, that this was just tactical, just survival, but I couldn't. Because somewhere between pulling that beam off Saliscren and standing between her and Hayes's rifle, something had shifted inside me. I didn't know what it was, didn't have a name for it, but it was real. Does it matter? I asked. She's willing to help us. Everything matters in war, you know that. Reyna sighed. Fine, we'll debrief her, but she stays under guard. And you're relieved of duty until further notice. You're compromised. Understood. They took Saliscren to a converted storage room for the debriefing. I wasn't allowed in. Instead, I was confined to a small bunk in the barracks section, with orders not to leave. My wound had gotten worse. The fever was climbing, and I was starting to have trouble staying conscious for more than a few hours at a time. I dreamed about Sofia, about New Gdansk burning, about Hayes screaming over the comm as the reactors went critical, about 73 Caltharus officers buried under rubble I'd caused. When I woke, Saliscren was sitting on the edge of my bunk. You shouldn't be here, I mumbled, my voice thick with fever. Your commander allowed it. She believes I might provide insight into your condition. My condition. You are dying, Marcus Torres. The infection has spread to your bloodstream. Without proper medical intervention, you have perhaps 48 hours. Sounds about right. You do not seem concerned. I've been on borrowed time since Verlaine. This is just the bill coming due. She was quiet for a moment. Then, They do not trust me, your resistance. Even after I gave them everything I know about concordant supply lines and fleet rotations, they believe I am deceiving them. Are you? No, but I would if I thought it would benefit my people, so their suspicion is logical. Welcome to the human condition. We never quite trust anyone, especially ourselves. How do you function like that? Badly, but we manage. She reached out and placed her hand on my forehead. Her skin was cool, scaled, alien, but the gesture was so human it made my chest ache. You have done more for me than any of my own kind would have. You saved me, protected me, risked your life for mine, and I do not know why. Neither do I. That is not a sufficient answer. It's the only one I have. She leaned closer, and I saw something in her golden eyes I hadn't seen before. Fear. Not of death, not of capture. Fear of something deeper. I do not want you to die, Marcus Torres. Why? Because you showed me that my empire is wrong. Because you made me question everything I believed. Because you are... She stopped, struggling with the words. Because you are the first person who has ever treated me as more than a function, more than a role to fulfill. I reached up and took her hand. Salis Kren. The alarms went off, loud, piercing, designed to wake the dead. Emergency lighting kicked on, bathing everything in red. We were under attack. I grabbed my rifle and stumbled after Salis Kren as she limped toward the command center. Reyna was there, shouting orders over the chaos. Caltheris ground forces, 2 companies at least, they're breaching through the eastern tunnels, must have detected Salis Kren's signal booster before we shut it down. How long do we have? I asked. 20 minutes if we're lucky. They'll punch through our defenses like tissue paper. Reyna looked at me, and I saw the calculation in her eyes. The same calculation every commander makes when they're out of options. We can't evacuate everyone in time, but we can buy time for some to get out. How? Collapse the tunnels. Bury them under a few thousand tons of rock. It'll cut off their advance long enough for the non-combatants to reach the secondary exit. You'll trap whoever stays behind. I know. She looked at Salis Kren. Your people use thermal mapping to track targets underground, don't they? Salis Kren hesitated, then nodded. Yes, but there are countermeasures. If you vent the reactor coolant into the tunnels, it will create thermal noise, confuse their sensors. How do you know that? Because I helped design the countermeasures for exactly this scenario. I was an intelligence officer. Defensive strategy is part of my training. Reyna studied her for a long moment. Then, do it. Show us how. The next 15 minutes were chaos. Salis Kren worked with the techs to rig the coolant system, her hands steady despite her injury. I helped Hayes and the other soldiers set charges in the tunnel supports, each one carefully placed to maximize collapse without bringing down the whole base. My fever was spiking. I could barely hold the detonator without my hands shaking. But I kept moving, kept working. Because stopping meant thinking about what came next. We got the last charge set with 3 minutes to spare. The non-combatants were already moving through the secondary tunnel. Families, kids, the wounded, maybe 40 people total. They'd make it out, find another cell, keep fighting. The rest of us, 12 soldiers and 1 Caltheris officer, stayed behind. Charges are set, Hayes reported. Remote detonators armed. We blow them as soon as the Caltheris enter the kill zone. Good. Reyna turned to me. Torres, you're with the evacuation group. You can barely stand. You're no use to us here. With respect, ma'am, go to hell. That's an order, Sergeant. Then court-martial me, if we survive. I looked at Salis Kren. I'm not leaving her. She's the reason they found us. And she's the reason any of us are going to survive this. So no. I'm staying. Reyna looked like she wanted to argue, but there wasn't time. Fine. But when you die, Torres, don't expect me to feel bad about it. Wouldn't dream of it. The Caltheris came exactly when their projections said they would. We heard them before we saw them. The precise rhythm of their boots, the mechanical efficiency of their advance. No shouting, no war cries, just cold, calculated movement. They entered the kill zone. Hayes triggered the charges. The tunnels came down with a roar that shook the entire structure. Dust and debris filled the air, and for a moment I couldn't see anything, couldn't breathe. Then the air recyclers kicked in, slowly clearing the smoke. The passage was blocked, sealed by tons of collapsed rock. We'd bought time, but we'd also trapped ourselves. Secondary exits, Rayna asked. Blocked by the collapse, one of the techs reported. We're sealed in. Wonderful. Rayna looked around at the faces staring back at her, exhausted, defeated, waiting for orders that wouldn't save them. All right, we've got maybe 6 hours of air, conserve power, ration water, and someone figure out if there's another way out of this hole. I slumped against the wall, the rifle sliding from my grip. My vision was going grey at the edges. The fever was winning. Salis Kren knelt beside me. Marcus, stay with me. Try harder. She looked over at Rayna. He needs medical attention immediately. The infection. We're all going to die down here, officer. His infection is the least of our problems. No, there is another way. Salis Kren stood, wincing as weight hit her injured leg. I can call them off. The Caltheris forces. I still have authority codes. If I transmit a stand-down order, they'll ignore you, Rayna said. You're behind enemy lines, compromised. They'll assume you're under duress. Not if I go to them. If I surrender myself and confirm the order directly, that's suicide. You know what they do to officers who get captured, who share intelligence with the enemy. Yes, I know. Salis Kren's voice was steady. But it will save you. Save him. Why would you do that? Hayes demanded. Why would you throw your life away for humans? Salis Kren looked at me, just looked. And in that moment, I saw everything she couldn't say. All the grief and anger and fear and something else. Something that didn't have a word in her language or mine. Because, she said quietly, he taught me that there are things more important than empires. No. I tried to stand. Couldn't. Salis Kren, no, don't. This is my choice, Marcus Torres. The first choice I have made that was truly mine. Let me have it. Rayna stepped between us. If you do this, if you walk out there, they'll execute you. Slowly, painfully. As an example. I know. Then why? Because he would do the same for me. And because I am tired of being a function, a tool, a piece in a machine I no longer believe in. She looked around at all of us. You fight for each other, for people you love, for ideas that cannot be calculated or measured. I want to fight for that too, just once. I want to matter. She mattered. God, she mattered. But I couldn't make my mouth form the words. Rayna was quiet for a long moment. Then she nodded. All right, but you don't go alone. Hayes, Torres, your escort. Get her to the Caltheris lines. Make sure she makes it. Mom, I can't, Hayes started. That wasn't a request. Hayes and I helped Salis Kren through the rubble-strewn passages toward the collapsed section. The Caltheris were already working to clear it, their equipment humming with efficient precision. We'd have maybe minutes before they broke through. At the edge of the collapse, Salis Kren stopped, turned to face me. I need you to know, she said, that you were not wrong to save me, that these days with you were the first time I have felt truly alive. Salis Kren, and I need you to live, Marcus Torres. I need you to survive this war and find a reason to keep fighting. Not for your empire, not for revenge, but for the future. For the possibility that someday humans and Caltharis might understand each other the way you and I did. She reached up and touched my face, her hand gentle despite the scales. Then she turned and climbed over the rubble toward the sound of her people working on the other side. I wanted to follow, wanted to drag her back, but Hayes grabbed my arm, held me in place. "Let her go, Torres. Let her do this." We heard her voice on the other side, heard her giving the stand-down order in that melodic, precise language of hers, heard the confusion in the responses, the questioning, then silence. Hayes pulled me back as the demolition charges went off, as the last of the tunnel came down, sealing the passage completely. She was gone. I don't remember much after that. The fever took me under, and I spent the next week in and out of consciousness while the resistance found another way out and got us to a field hospital. They pumped me full of antibiotics, cut the infected tissue away, and somehow kept me alive. When I finally woke up, the war was over. Not because humanity won, we didn't, but because the Concordance had withdrawn from the sector, citing unacceptable strategic costs. Jericho 7 was abandoned, returned to human control by default. Reyna came to see me in the hospital, told me what happened after, how the Caltharis had honored Salis Kren's stand-down order, how they'd pulled back, allowing the resistance to evacuate, how she'd bought us time we couldn't have gotten any other way. She didn't tell me what they did to Salis Kren after. Didn't need to. I knew. They sent me home 6 months later. Medical discharge. They tried to give me medals. I refused them. I kept the engagement ring, though. And I added something else. A small piece of blue fabric I'd torn from Salis Kren's uniform before she left. 2 reminders. 2 ghosts. 2 people who deserved better than what this universe gave them. People ask me sometimes why I volunteer at the Caltharis integration centers. Why I work so hard to help the few Caltharis who've chosen to leave the Concordance and live among humans. Why I fight so hard for peace when I spent 7 years fighting for war. I never know how to explain it. How do you explain that an enemy soldier taught you what it meant to be human? That in the ruins of a dead world, you found something worth believing in again? So I just tell them the truth. The simple, insufficient truth. She saved me. And not just from bleeding out in the rubble. She saved the part of me that still believed people, human or alien, could choose to be better than what the universe demanded. Could sacrifice for strangers, could love across the impossible divides of culture and species and war. She saved me from becoming the monster I was so close to being. And every day I work for peace is a day I honor that gift. Every Caltharis I help is a step toward the future she believed in. The one where understanding matters more than conquest. Where mercy isn't weakness but the hardest kind of strength. I'm not a sergeant anymore, not a soldier. I'm just Marcus Torres, a man trying to build something better from the ashes of what was. But sometimes, late at night, I take out that scrap of blue fabric and remember golden eyes in the darkness. Remember a voice telling me I wasn't a monster. Remember the first choice that was truly hers. And I keep fighting, not with rifles and bombs, but with hope. With stubborn, irrational, human hope that maybe, just maybe, we can be better than our worst instincts. Because that's what she taught me. That's what humans do. We choose hope when logic says to despair. We choose mercy when reason says to take revenge. We choose each other, again and again, even when the universe itself says we shouldn't. That's the human way. That's what makes us who we are. And I'll be damned if I let her sacrifice be for nothing. So I keep going, keep building, keep hoping. For her, for Sophia, for Hayes and all the others who died so the rest of us could live. But mostly, I do it because she was right. There are things more important than empires, and I finally know what they are.